Hey guys, Lee Donna here. Thank you for joining me. To edit or not to edit? That is the question. I have actually answered this question about a dozen times already, but you guys are going to see if you are brave enough to stick around that it's sort of a jumbled compilation from different videos that I shot sometime in the middle of the night. It is daytime now. I have marginally a clearer mind at the moment. It's very interesting to watch these videos back when I think that I'm being coherent, but I'm not. My train derails quite often. So if you are still listening and you are brave enough to continue onto this video, it's getting ready to get super choppy. I do apologize for that. And I think I explained somewhere in the video, if I didn't have to cut this part out, that I'm doing these videos not as coming from a professional standpoint, but just as an author to potentially other new authors. And hopefully something that I say will resonate with you. So are you still listening? You did hear that this is going to be a mess beyond this point. Okay, here we go. Bye. Hey guys, Lee Donna here. Thank you for joining me on another video. Today we are going to talk about editing. To edit or not to edit? That is the question. Authors have many different opinions on this topic. I think for the most part, everyone pretty much agrees that you do need to edit. And that's certainly my position on it as well. But we're going to talk a little bit about maybe the reasons that people don't edit. And then we'll get into why myself and so many others say that editing is a must. One of the big reasons that a lot of authors don't want to do the editing is because it is expensive. In today's age, especially if you're doing just ebooks, which a lot of authors are just producing ebooks, the editing is the biggest cost to them as far as being able to get their book to market. So if you are a new author and you're starting out and you're in the situation where you're looking at the cost to get an edit done and it's just completely out of your budget, you can do a couple of things. One of them, I've heard some authors say that they go through their books over and over and over. Sometimes you can go to a critique group and have members of that group. You guys can trade chapters and try to sort of edit each other's work. So critique groups are typically free. You can probably find one in your area. If not, you can most definitely find one online. The idea of getting an edit is that you really do need somebody else to put eyes on your work. As an author, you are omniscient. You know everything, and we are writing and we think we are just clear as day and that we've explained everything correctly, but a reader is going to pick up our work and maybe be confused and they're not going to see it that way. So when you have somebody else going through your work, they're able to point out these things to you, even if it's a situation of you've told somebody what happened, but the story would be better if you showed what happened, if you wrote that scene as it was happening versus telling somebody what happened after the fact. So there are a lot of little things that if you get the right person to put eyes on your work, they'll be able to help you through that. So for instance, I've had editors before and I will have a note in a manuscript that just says, this doesn't make sense. That is not a helpful comment, guys. Okay. The editor that I have now, Anita with Proof Positive, she has had these comments sometimes where she says, I don't understand what you mean here. Do you mean A? If so, say it this way. Do you mean B? If so, you might try something like this. So she gives me ideas that let me see what she didn't understand. And then you have those aha moments where you're like, oh, okay, yeah. So I actually was meaning A. And now I see the way that she suggested I say it versus what I did right. And you just grow as an author by being able to see those corrections. This is the kind of person that you want to work with. And you can find that in somebody. They don't have to be a professional editor. Okay. So look for somebody that really is willing to help you make your manuscript be the best that it can be, understanding that there's no such thing as perfection. We're not talking about if you get an editor, you're going to have some perfect, glorious work. It just isn't true. Reading is subjective. People have opinions. You like things, you don't like things. There are certain times that I'll pick up a book and I think, I don't like this today, but when I'm in this other mood over here, that's the day that I need to read this book. And so I just table it and I wait until I'm in the mood for it. So when we are talking about the cost of professional editing, that is something that you can budget for. Now, I understand that that is really hard to hear because I've been in that situation where I didn't have 10 cents in my bank account. And the idea of putting hundreds to thousands of dollars into an edit would have just been something that seemed unattainable. So I get it and I understand how daunting the cost of getting a professional edit can be. You might have a skill that someone who does editing could use. Maybe you're really good at marketing. Maybe you're really good at doing graphics. Maybe you can design book covers. But a lot of authors are editors and editors are authors. So if you have somebody who has a different business that you have a skill set that you could help provide for them, maybe you can work out a trade there. You can find people if you go to some of the different author groups. There's a lot of stuff on social media. I'm a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors, and it is very much worth joining that organization. Again, it is a dues membership fee that you're going to pay every year, but the information that you'll get from the Alliance is invaluable. You can have a lot of contacts made there. They have a members only Facebook group, and you can go and you can ask questions and you get real answers. I've done this a couple of times, even something as simple. I was having a problem in one of my manuscripts where the word counts kept changing. And then I would set a chapter somewhere and go back and it wasn't starting on the right page. And I have zero skills with anything in technology. Actually, I just learned how to put comments in a Word document. I'm just a click above using typewriters and that sort of thing. Just this morning, I was trying to work on a Patreon and also my newsletter, and the Patreon website all of a sudden stopped working and it gives me a 500 error or 501. I don't know, Levi's 501 something. I don't know. And then Canva, which I also need to do Patreon and my newsletter, same thing. I could get into every other website fine, but those two that I need, I'm getting this error code. And when I looked it up, it was saying that something was wrong on the server side. I guess it's nothing on my end. I don't have a clue what to do. So I turned my laptop off, turn it back on, still having the same error. So now I'm just doing this video and we'll see if everything comes back online later. So a group like the Alliance where I can go and ask questions. It can be about writing or just something technical with a document and get an answer really quickly from people who have been in this business a long time. They know what they're doing. The Alliance puts out guidebooks. They do podcasts. They do author Twitter chats. And there's a lot of stuff that you can get from the Alliance for free. But certainly if you can afford that membership, it's also worth it just to be part of that private Facebook group and know that the people that you're talking to and you're getting information from, they're going to help you. Everybody is always supportive and friendly. I go there and just as an observer and read a lot because people have some of the same questions that I have and questions that I didn't even know I should have. So it's a really great, valuable resource. And they have editors within the organization, people that Ally has vetted. So you know that you can trust these editors. There's places like Readsy. I think they also do some vetting in their organization. So there are places that you can go and you can find editors and people that are working in this space. And if they have a bio out, that's where you could find out if they do something else, and maybe you have a skill that you can offer just to see if they might trade. You never know. So critique groups, trading with somebody, all of those things are good options while you're saving to try to reach that dollar amount where you can afford to hire a professional editor. Some authors will go ahead and publish their work with the goal of making the money from book sales in order to hire an editor and get that manuscript cleaned up. And you can certainly do that as well. There's, I think, a valid conversation around whether or not a reader cares if the book is grammatically correct. And I always, on every one of these topics, I come down on the side of the reader because it is the reader who matters. And many readers say, I don't care. As long as the story is good and it's compelling and I move forward, I don't really care about whether the commas are in the right place or maybe some word was misused. And I, as a reader, have certainly read books that very clearly the editing wasn't done or it wasn't done well. And I've been on both sides of that where it's been so distracting and things haven't been correct that it really took me out of the story and I enjoyed it less. And then I've had the situation where I know what they're talking about. I know that they meant to use a different word there and it's fine. And because I like the book. And so that's a very individual thing. And I understand that as a reader. But I do think that as an author, we have a responsibility. Somebody is paying us for our work. We are content creators and we want to see our books sell. And I do think that we have an obligation to put out the very best product that we can. And editing is the way that you're going to do that. If you are somebody, I hear authors say, I edit my own work. You can do that on your own. I would caution to just think about you are omniscient. You know everything. So as you're going through your book and you're reading things, maybe your commas are going to be in the right place. Maybe you're going to have all of your punctuation correct. You're going to know if a word's supposed to be hyphenated or not. You're going to have consistency. I read a lot of work from like the UK. And so I have this English that, for instance, my editor will correct the word gray because I have a tendency to write it Grey instead of Gray. But the rest of my book is sort of American English and it would be Gray. And so that is something that she's corrected. And I have many words that are like that, just even in my everyday life, I'm going to mix those. And those are the things that an editor will catch. And again, your readers may not care, but I think anywhere that reader is located in the world, if your book is consistent and they see, oh, this is an American author, so they're writing this way. This is a British author, they're writing this way. Whatever it is, I think it is important to have that consistency. And again, that just goes back to, can you as the author really catch all of those things? And I think it's impossible because you are so close to the work, you literally cannot see the forest for the trees. You're looking at the trees, you don't see the whole picture. Your editor is going to come in and they're going to give you a really clear and clean and concise vision. And they're going to point out these little inconsistencies for you. And it's only going to make your work better. Yes, there is a point that too much editing is too much editing. And at some point, you just have to cut it loose and put the work into the world. So I think I wrote down good enough is good enough, but it can always be better. However, it will never be perfect. So when we're editing, I think we always have to land sort of in that middle spot where we realize this is probably good enough. I could probably do this on my own and I can put this work out and it's probably good enough. I can get a second set of eyes on it, somebody who's really looking for all of the little nitty gritty things in my manuscript, and they can make it better. And I can continue to have editing done, whether I pay other people to do it or myself. And sometimes people get stuck in that very last section and they're not publishing their books because they're like, it's not quite right. I do this all the time where I just have to force myself. I set a standard. I have a process that I go through. And then I tell myself, I'm done. This is going out the way that it is. I'm really impressed by authors out there. You guys are, sometimes you can sit and watch them write in real time, or on their Patreons, they're putting rough drafts and things like that out there. And I'm really impressed by that. I do not have the confidence to do that. Even doing these videos, sometimes I listen to them back and I think that I'm being clear and concise. And it's not. My brain sort of jumps from track to track to track. And sometimes I'm just not coherent. That's why I'm happy that there are places like the Alliance of Independent Authors. They put out a lot of videos. They'll talk about editing. And you can learn from actual professionals about all these things. I'm just here to maybe strike a chord with somebody that might relate to me. Usually we find somebody, their voice resonates with us. So if you are a new author and you're out there and you're struggling and you're not sure about editing and how important that is, and you're hearing conflicting ideas, there are ways, like you can publish without editing, but I think if you do that, you're doing a disservice to your manuscript. And also, if you do choose that route, I think it's always better if you would figure into down the road, once you've made some money on your books, to go back and have those books edited. There are many authors that have done that as well. I've heard those stories over and over and over where people are just putting something up just to see if they have an audience for it. And once they realize they do, then they go back and they edit those works. And then they're sort of moving forward and picking up that momentum. And they see the sales difference once they get their work edited. So set goals for yourself as an author and don't neglect the editing, at least to some degree. I know that there are people that have been in the business a really long time, and you often hear them say, I've had enough feedback from my editor over the years that now I know I don't need my editor because I can look for those things. And I think that's probably true. There are probably remarkable people in this world that don't need an editor. They're going to get it right. And again, we're not talking about perfection. We're talking about just a level of professionalism and accuracy and consistency in our work. And I'm sure there are people that are doing that every day by themselves, and it's great, and the readers love it. And like I said, there's a lot of readers who will say, I don't really care about if it's, quote, well written, unquote. They just want that story. And I've certainly myself read books that there's a lot of mistakes, but the story is really compelling, and so I don't care. So I'm saying this just to say, editing is important. Do not neglect it, but don't stress out so much. If you're a writer, you are a writer, and you don't have to let these things hold you back. Where there's a will, there is a way. So find somebody that will critique with you. And especially if there's another author that you connect with on these author groups, like the Wide for the Win Facebook group is another really good one. There's not a lot of shenanigans. Some author groups, they get dramatic for lack of a better word. And so find the ones that aren't like that, where you have truly supportive people that you can ask questions to. And Wide for the Win, I'm a wide author. I publish on all the retailers. And so that's a really good fit for me. The Six Figure Authors podcast also has a Facebook group. That podcast ended recently, but you can still get information from them on YouTube. I'm pretty sure all their episodes are still up. And the Creative Pen podcast by Joanna Penn is a must. She is also a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors, and Orna Ross and Joanna Penn do some advanced author chats, and Orna does chats with many other people. So there's a lot of free information out there. So before you go into these groups and just start asking questions, search. A lot of them have documents up where you can find a lot of information, and then somebody else has probably already asked your question. So just search for it. Especially if you're just starting out, you have so many questions, but so many people have been there before you and they've had those same questions and they've answered them. And now you have these seasoned pros in the business and they've put the information out there for you. Choosing an editor. This is really what I wanted to talk to you guys about, because not all editors offer the same service. For example, what I get is called a developmental edit. Now, I've had developmental edits by multiple different editors. And when I had one from Proof Positive, which is the editing company that I use now, I was absolutely blown away because it was so detailed. And I honestly didn't read the fine print. Their developmental edit includes copy editing and proofreading inside of that package. Now, normally a developmental edit is where they're looking at character development, the structure of the story, looking for plot holes. It's, you think of it as the bones of the story they're scouring through. And that's the service that I had received in the past, was just sort of comments. There was no actual grammatical fixing of any kind. But Proof Positive does all of that in theirs. So even though you would go to an editing service thinking, I know what a developmental edit is, I know what a line edit is, I know what a copy edit is, always look at what they say is included in that package, because I'm a clear example of I did not do that and I was pleasantly surprised. But if I had looked at these things before, and even if I had gone through several editors and asked each of them to edit sample pages, then I would have known sooner that I was kind of maybe wasting money over here on this side when I could be having this service here. The whole thing about finding an editor is getting somebody that you can work with. Now, I love Proof Positive. I'm going to put a link to their website in the show notes of this video. Do not overwhelm them. I need 3 spots a year. So please leave room for me in their schedule. But they are really, really great. And Christy Stratos, who runs that editing service, is a very good author. If you want to know how to write characters, read her work and study how she writes them. She truly gives you the human experience. People are not one-dimensional. There are good things about us and bad things, and she really captures that in her characters. And I think about her characters long after I've read her work. In fact, I have some of her books on my shelf right now. She wrapped them so pretty and I don't want to open them. And I've already read the ebooks, so I'm just kind of saving those in the wrapping paper. But she's a very, very good author and an excellent editor. And I don't know if she says this anywhere on her service, but she really pretty much rewrites my blurbs, because I am abysmal at that. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's one of those situations where, like, my last blurb that I sent to her, I thought was good. And she said, no, it isn't. And rewrote it basically. And then I read what she writes and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I meant to say the whole time. So those are the types of editors that you need if you are like me. And I know that some of you are pretty dialed in and you don't have that struggle, but I basically write the way that I talk, and my train jumps all over the tracks, and sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. But so finding a good editor is invaluable. So sample edits from any of the editors prior to hiring them. Sometimes there's a body of work, other books that they've edited and things like that that you can look at. You can go to their website. They usually have authors listed that they've represented in the past and that sort of thing. Some of them have sample pages that are up for you to look at. And usually they all tell you the type of editing that they offer. And the things that you hear most are developmental edit, copy edit, proofreading, that sort of thing. And it's really, really important to choose the right editor. Personality types and skill levels and how you communicate are all really important. Editor who is going to make your work better by calling out these little things that it's adjusting, right? These little nuanced adjustments. If you've used this word too many times, you've used too many exclamation points. Like sometimes as an author, you can really feel in a book how badly the author wants you to get something. They want you to understand. And as an author, we tend to underestimate our readers because something is so important to us. And maybe we underestimate ourselves actually because we're thinking we didn't write it in a way that they're going to understand it unless we say the same thing over and over. I actually just dealt with this a little bit in the book that I just wrote. I felt like it was getting repetitive, and it was frustrating for me. And at the end, I think it was just a matter of I didn't want to finish this book because it was the end of really an era in my life to finish the Bell or Tie set. I'm going to get emotional. I'm going to cry on every video, just get teary-eyed. But yeah, I think I was just having a mental block, and I've made a lot of mistakes in that manuscript. But thankfully, my editor pointed out all of these things. And so I was able to go back and clean it up and see what I was doing wrong. And from an author standpoint, you need to find somebody that communicates with you the way that you want to. Now, I have heard authors say when they send their book to editing, it is the way that it's going to be, and they don't want the editor to tell them anything about the plot. They don't want an editor to say, this is moving too slow. They don't want an editor to say, this scene feels unnecessary. They don't want their editor to tell them, this is repetitive. You're saying this word too many times. My editor will actually suggest a different word. And sometimes, even though it's a normal word and it's the correct word in the sentence, my editor will just make a suggestion to say, this is fine, but what do you think about this? And it's just as she's reading it, she just, in her mind, she thinks of a different word. And I actually love that because it's almost you getting a perspective of a reader and seeing what would impact the reader more. So I actually love the way that I get all this feedback from her. So basically what those authors want is just sort of a copy edit or even a proofread where they're just wanting sort of somebody to run through it and make sure that they've put periods in the right place and commas. So find an editor that is going to work well with what you want from the editor, and understand what different types of edits are, and definitely get those samples from every editor. It doesn't matter how long they've been in the business. It doesn't matter how good the samples that you've looked at, maybe from other books that they've edited, because you really need them to look at your work. And if you have the option to send any page number. They might want a chapter or two. They might have a page count, 5 pages, 10 pages. I think I've noticed some people will say 20 pages. So whatever the editor's sample level is, find something in your manuscript that maybe you question, especially if you're going to get a developmental edit, and send that and see how all of the different editors respond to that. And do let them know that you are contacting other editors as well, so that they know that they're not the only people that are looking at your manuscript. So the developmental edit is sort of step one in my mind, because that's where they're going to look at the plot and the structure and all of those things. And then you can move on to copy edits and line edits. They're still looking at style and tone in those, but you're going to get some grammatical fixes and things like that. And then the proofread would be the very final stage. Now, I don't do all of those because my editor in their developmental edit service, they actually proofread and copy edit sort of in one big package. I'm going to put a link to their website in the show notes, but you have to leave room for me. I actually have a lot of anxiety, and these are the things that it's probably the reason, like, it's whatever hour right now that I'm recording this, and I haven't had a lot of sleep, is because I stress about, what am I going to do if my editor retires? What am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do? So anyway, when you don't sleep, you have a lot of anxiety about all of these things. And if I ever contact my editor and they tell me that they can't fit me in, then I'm going to do a video and tell all of you to leave them alone, because I need them. So anyway, Proof Positive, they are amazing editors. They've really helped me to be a better writer myself because of those little comments that are in the manuscript. And you do learn over time. I will never reach a place that I think that I have learned enough that I don't need my editor. But there is style that is unique to the writer. And I think when you have a good editor, they will see your style. You can even tell them, I wrote this book in this particular way, so it's meant to have short and choppy sentences and things like that. And a good editor will work with that. They're not going to try to change it. They're just going to make sure you're consistent in the style that you've chosen to write in. Now, sometimes so as far as the grammar and punctuation and things like that, I go through and edit and I accept all of those. I do look at them because I just want to see, but I will originally go through when I get my edit back and accept all of those. And then I make any changes to the manuscript that I need to make. And then I do what I call a clean read, which is where I want to go through this book and pretend that I am a reader. I don't want to see any glaring mistakes or anything that I need to fix. I really want to just be able to read this as a reader. When I'm going through and I'm doing that part of it, occasionally I'll get to a place that I need a comma. And I may have had one there originally and the editor took it out because that's not the correct way to have that sentence. Okay. But when you're reading it, it is necessary. So then I will put those commas back in. And I do it that way because I know, okay, this manuscript is exactly how Anita has laid it out. And then I can, as the author, apply a little bit more style, because just as I'm reading it, sometimes even for an emotional situation, you just need that pause. You want the reader to be able to take a breath. Don't be afraid to change things in your manuscript from what the editor has put in there. I feel like I'm getting less coherent as this goes on. I am so tired and I am so sorry. One day I'm going to make really great videos for you guys and explain all this stuff in detail. That'll be right after I sleep for like a whole year. I'm going to do one of those spells. I've heard actually of people having these sleeping diseases, and I think I need to get one of those. And somebody can, my husband can come in about a year, give me a kiss, wake me up, and then I will record a video on editing that will make complete sense to everybody. Okay, so get samples from editors, reach out to critique groups if you can't afford to get an edit right now. Try to find somebody that will look at your work and help you to just make it better. I think we need to get eyes on our work that are different than our own, just so people can tell us you're not going to make everybody happy. There's no such thing as perfection. Your work is not going to be for everybody. You're not going to have every person that reads it love it. Some people will think it's written well. Some people will think that it isn't. You're not talking about trying to reach a level of perfection that just simply doesn't exist. When you put your work out, it belongs to the readers and it is completely subjective. You know books that you love that other people don't. People argue about everything, whether or not to be a romance, there has to be sex in a book. I don't think it does, but there's a whole, squad of people that say if there's no sex in the book, it isn't romance. So it's not worth arguing about. I think just you as an author, make a commitment to yourself and to your readers that you are going to deliver them the best book possible. And that doesn't mean perfection. That doesn't mean that every time your readers pick up one of your books, they're going to love it. It means that they can trust that you're doing your very best. And you want to put out things that you can feel good about. You can go back later and edit a manuscript. When you're talking ebooks, this is really easy for an independent author to readdress issues in their book and then upload the file again. Now, if you are doing audiobooks, there's whisper syncing, and if you change too many things, these books won't sync up, and there's some other things to think about there. But still, when you're talking about an ebook, it's relatively easy to fix, mistakes and to get an edit later if you couldn't afford it in the beginning. But I just don't like the idea of I would just never trust myself, I suppose. And so I'm enamored with people who do, and especially when they say that they do this and I pick up one of their books and it's really good, So there are people that are superhuman and they can maybe put out a good product without hiring an editor, but I think it's well worth it. I think it's probably some of the best money that you can spend to just make sure that that story is really, really good. Thank you guys for listening, for sticking with me this long. I know my videos always end up getting rambly because halfway through I forget what I'm supposed to even be talking about. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me on another video. Please hit that subscribe button. I'm going to start recording podcast episodes soon. And once I have enough of those in store, I will release the podcast. In my next newsletter, I am going to probably announce the title for the podcast. And I also have a 99-cent book deal for you that's going to be in that newsletter. So you can go to leadonabooks.com and subscribe. I will also put a link to my newsletter in the show notes down below. I appreciate you guys joining me. See you next time. As soon as I figure out what a pixel is, we will make some progress here. The last that I knew, a pixel was like how many dots were in a picture. And now I'm supposed to be putting pixels on my website. So, I'm now going to go figure out how to maybe get on the internet.